We're going to break this down a bit more with Angela Diffley, who joins me on the set. So, Angela, here we are looking at the national rally that could possibly be on course for this absolute majority. We heard there a bit about these efforts to try and stop that happening. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, one thing we should point out, it's just been announced that Macron is holding an emergency meeting at the Élysée. However you look at these results, it is a disaster for Macron and for his political centre party. As to this idea of tactical voting and strategic pulling out of candidates, where there are three candidates, as we heard there from Eliza, the one with the best chance of beating the far-right candidate is going to stay in, and there will be arrangements made with other parties for the one with the least chance to pull out. That depends on them cooperating, which is not quite as straightforward as that. This is people's personal fiefdoms. They're not always that easy to give up on it. Where there is a straightforward duel, where you have a far left or a far right candidate, that is proving very problematic. We'll talk about that in a second. But just to look at this idea of candidates pulling out, not all parties have been clear on whether they will pull out their candidates. The left bloc has said unequivocally, we will urge our candidates who are in the second round, if they don't have a good chance of beating a far-right candidate, to pull out, and we urge our voters not to vote under any circumstances for a far-right candidate. Other parties have been much less clear. The mainstream right-wing Republicans, who are reduced to quite a small number of MPs now, they have said, we're leaving it up to voters, which many are reading as a code for go ahead and vote for the RN if you want to. Some of the centre-right parties, the smaller parties that were allied with Macron, are saying don't vote for the far left or the far right. And Macron himself has been a little vague. We've heard almost nothing from him. A written statement came out last night in which he said, on a case-by-case basis, people should judge and vote for the most democratic, Republican, moderate candidate they have a choice to vote for.
Right. The big question is all of this kind of strategizing actually going to work?
Well, the other thing is that French voters are getting fed up of it. On numerous occasions, they have been asked to play this game. It is called a Republican front, and the idea is to unite and do anything to stop the far right. And it's pretty unlikely, I think, this time that very many French voters will heed it. They will do what they have decided to do. It's also a difficult choice because in that left-wing bloc, it's not that there are a few far-left candidates. It is that it is dominated by a far-left party. And very many voters saying, I am being asked to choose between the plague and cholera. I don't want either of these candidates. On the far left are candidates who have been extremely anti-police in their rhetoric, who are judged by many to be far too lax on law and order, which has been a huge issue in this campaign. Some of them economically are pretty anti-capitalists. So very many people are unhappy with that choice. Some will simply choose not to make the choice and will abstain.
Right. So it looks like one very possible alternative here could be a hung parliament. What would that mean and what would that look like?
Yeah, that's worth talking about as well, because the choice really is between perhaps an absolute majority on the far right or a very unstable arrangement, because there will be not a full majority for anyone. And it will lead to, we can see there what might happen. You can imagine in a hung parliament after the second round how those seats might be redistributed. And what will happen is an unstable government which might topple at any time if there is a vote of confidence. Macron has said he will not resign as president. Even if he did resign, a new president cannot dissolve parliament. And so you have a very difficult situation where you have no stable government and effectively political gridlock. Nothing can be passed, no legislation can be passed, and at any moment the government could topple, which leads to instability in the money markets. So however you look at it, the French people have got a very difficult choice ahead of them.
They certainly do. All right, Angela, thanks so much for that. We'll be checking back in with you throughout the day here on France 24.